it was Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, who said that there are times in history when more happens in a week than happen in a year, and when more happens in a year than happened in the previous 100 years. And we are definitely in that time frame right now, but because of the convergence of technological developments, population, communication, and high-powered military hardware, and other factors all combining together now, you're not going to see a decade of rapid change and accelerated change by orders of magnitude. You're going to see, from here on out, a quickening with all of the benefits and dangers of high technology, life extension. The issue is, though, the ruling global elite, from their own statements and white papers, the ruling global elite that are in control of society right now have disdain for the general public. They think of you as scum and trash. They don't even want to dumb you down or enslave you further. They want to set up a global police state so they can then exterminate you. And this is their stated goal. We've covered it ad nauseum with my film, Endgame, Blueprint for Global Enslavement, and other documentaries. And we've read their publications and quotes here on air over and over and over again. And so if you're a new viewer or listener and you're laughing about this, you better do a little research. Say at whatistheendgame.com or endgamethemovie.com and read the full bibliography for the 2.5-hour film and check all the facts and claims for yourself. You might want to read Eco-Science, written by the White House Science Czar, 1,100 pages. You might want to read the 900 pages of Tragedy and Hope. You might want to read The Secret Team by Colonel L. Fletcher Prouty, now back in print, by the way, available at Infowars.com. Of course, Eco-Science and Tragedy and Hope are written by top globalists from their perspective of how they got to have a planetary dictatorship to then kill you, to do it as humanely as possible, sterilize you with the fluoride, but that's not enough. You can read the head Pentagon liaison, and they don't deny this, it's on record, between the Pentagon and Black Ops, Bay of Pigs, you name it, where he details everything that Joseph McCarthy said was true. Everything and more. And of course, the Russians in the last decade have declassified their McCarthy files, and you've seen the headline in the New York Times, McCarthy was right. But now it's quaint and funny. Kind of like a decade ago, time sure flies, I was watching History Channel, and they had the 90-plus-year-old former CIA section chief on from 1949 who was over China and also Indochina, not just China proper, but also over Vietnam. And he bragged and said, yes, we put Mao Zedong in power. We didn't like Chiang Kai-shek, but we couldn't tell the public that at the time because communism was unpopular. Now, I literally almost fell out of my chair. Just like when I heard BBC admit our government grows and ships out the opium out of Afghanistan last year. I almost ran off the road listening to XM. Because I already knew this, but to hear Kermit Roosevelt 6-7 years ago on NPR, it was a tape after he died. He died in 99, CIA commander, 53, was Schwarzkopf's daddy overthrowing Iran, bragging that they staged terror attacks and used radical Muslims to overthrow Mohammad Mossadegh. Again, I already know all of this, but to hear him brag about it, knowing that the public's so dumbed down and so pathetic that they can now have Geraldo Rivera go on Fox and talk to Marine Corps commanders with the troops gathered around going, you're growing the opium here. Tell us why. Well, we have to grow it or Al-Qaeda will get it. So we got to help the farmers grow it and ship it out. We don't cover conspiracy theories here on this show, ladies and gentlemen, 99% of the time. We get into numerology and the occult and how the elite are obsessed with it, yes, but only because that's what they're into. It's all conspiracy, no theory. But rereading The Secret Team, because Jesse Ventura recommended I reread it. He had just read it and was blown away by it. Paradigm shifting for him. And I told Ventura off air, I said, now you got to read Tragedy and Hope. You know, don't just read somebody on the inside who was against it. Read somebody from the inside who was for it. But what does this have to do with North Korea? Everything. There were several meetings with Roosevelt and Churchill that they had at the end of World War II. And then after Roosevelt died, meetings with Stalin and, of course, Harry Truman. And those were public meetings, you know, that they announced each time months after it had happened. And he talks about in there how the Soviets, who'd been our ally during World War II, you know, the West said, how do we set up a police state domestically? How do you set up a police state? You need an enemy. And they said, well, we'll demonize you, you demonize us. We'll cover your atrocities, you'll cover ours. And then we'll have proxy wars with each other so we don't ever have to nuke each other. And we'll take half of a country and you take the other half. You take half of Korea, we take the other half of Vietnam, the other half. We take half of Europe, which they divided Germany in half, of course, and took over half of Eastern Europe. We'll divide it all in half with you. And that at first was even public. And it was all staged, every stinking bit of it. Oh, it's not staged when you're in a foxhole, you know, fighting communists. But it's staged when you're in the upper command and you're not allowed to bomb actual factories in the north. And, of course, it got declassified 2 weeks ago that the U.S. wanted to nuke China with Russia. In fact, reprint me that London Guardian article. The headline was, Russia wanted to nuke China. And then you read that, well, the U.S. 2 years before had wanted to nuke them as part of their deal with the communists because China wasn't following their agreements that had been made when the U.S. put Mao into power. So there is some infighting going on from time to time. There's no honor among thieves with these people. So they're always double-checking each other. It's like the final round of Risk or multi-dimensional, multi-level chess. They're not just playing with two colors. Okay, it's more like 5 or 6 big factions with sub-factions all in there cheating each other. Now, what had McCarthy said? McCarthy had said there were communists everywhere taking over America. Look at us 50 years later. Big government runs everything. They tell you what size your light bulb can be, what type of toilet you can have, where your kids can, just everything's controlled now. But it's communism by the banks. They take your money and then give it to themselves through the government. But as soon as Joseph McCarthy, and if you understand this, you understand everything. As soon as Joseph McCarthy realized and went public and said, I've discovered the communist conspiracy is run by the Pentagon. And they said, excuse me, you're saying that the commies in Russia have infiltrated the Pentagon. And he said, no. I mean, go read his speeches. He said, no, the Pentagon is the communist. That's who runs the whole thing. Well, who had set up the UN in 45? Who had set up the tank and tractor factories with General Motors and Ford? Who gave Russia the weapons and the oil and the raw materials to then ship it to North Korea and ship it to northern Vietnam and to ship it into Cuba? Because, again, the U.S. gets to take part of a country. Again, it goes back to World War II. What did Hitler do? He made a secret deal with Stalin. This is now declassified in public. The Nazi/Soviet pact. They made a deal to where Hitler said he was protecting Poland from the Russians, and the Russians were protecting the other part of Poland from the Nazis. And so they came in and divided the country of Poland. I mean, if you want to defeat the New World Order, folks, you've got to understand their master strategic planning and why they're so hard to beat and stop thinking black versus white, Christian versus Muslim, two-dimensional game of checkers. This is chess, but at multi-level. It's like playing 10 chess games at once, folks, with millions of different factors coming in. And so as soon as McCarthy realized that the communist conspiracy was run by Wall Street, he was no longer useful. Oh, he was very useful letting the feds take over Hollywood and create a right-wing backlash that they could push a police state with as part of this dialectic. But as soon as he figured out the real takeover, he was out of there in a New York minute. We'll be right back. Okay, so that was quite a bit of preface in the last segment before I get into North Korea. Fast forwarding to 1995-96, the head of ABB, the Swiss nuclear power plant company, is Donald Rumsfeld, a key gopher for the globalist. He's the guy that gets DU approved for our troops to use. He's the guy that gets aspartame approved. He's the guy that gets Prozac approved. He is the key man on so many levels. He gets, 6? We can pull up the article. In fact, I don't want to go off memory. Google nuclear reactors to North Korea, Donald Rumsfeld, ABB. But multiple reactors are sent, and they're the type that you can actually create A-bombs with the material. And the media was like, why did the Swiss sell them this? Why did the U.S. government stand by? Why did our government and Israel help, on record, give AQCon Laboratories from the late 80s through the mid-90s the components to not just make hydrogen bombs or A-bombs, but to have medium-range and long-range delivery system? There it is. There's ABB's website. ABB to deliver systems equipped to North Korean nuclear plants. There's their press release. Good job, guys. Donald Rumsfeld ran that. And he's always the head of the company for like 6 months. He'll step in and get aspartame approved. Chemical weapon feces from bacteria. You can't make this stuff up. He'll step in and get Prozac approved as the head of the company. He'll step in and get Terminator seeds approved. He'll step in and get the bioweapons of Saddam in '84. He'll step in and get the reactors transferred. Brzezinski's a similar high-level globalist. So is Kissinger. But the issue here is, in fact, here's another headline today dealing with Israel. London Guardian giving nukes to South Africa. Why? Why was Israel involved with the U.S. and England creating the Mujahideen to fight the Russians? They've always run these Muslim extremists. And again, you'll have the top terror controllers who are Muslim leaders, who are global double and triple agents, who literally have Muslim extremists working for them, who really think they're fighting for Allah out doing this. So the guy they bust in the street, he's a real Muslim terrorist. But he doesn't know he's working for Mossad or MI6. In fact, I've got another stack of mainstream articles here today. Headline, Terror Inquest May Probe MI5 Role, BBC. MI5 faces probe over July 7 bombings. MI5 faces probe over 7/7 and their role in it. How long have we told you that that's an inside job? And the families have demanded this investigation on the cover-up. And you go to the evidence. The government ran those attacks on 7/7.